Tonight, Montreal's Liberal mayor attacks the Western Canadian oil patch that pays his bills. Well, I've got an answer for him. It's January 22nd, and you're watching The Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
You come here once a year with a sign, and you feel morally superior.
The only thing I have to say to the government for why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
Yesterday, the mayor of Montreal, a Liberal named Denis Coderre, demanded that a state-of-the-art high-tech oil pipeline called Energy East be blocked from passing over Quebec's sacred territory, even though the oil is to supply a refinery in Quebec that wants the oil, and then it would go on to New Brunswick too, where they want the oil so badly their provincial legislature voted unanimously to support the Energy East pipeline. They really need the jobs in New Brunswick that will come from this pipeline. I mean, it's a $15.7 billion infrastructure project, and that's just the construction. The whole point of building it is to bring in oil to feed Eastern Canadian refineries to displace foreign conflict oil that they now import from OPEC. Even at today's oil prices, that's more than $10 billion a year. But Denis Coderre doesn't care, because you see, Quebec gets $21 billion a year right now in transfer payments, extracted in part from the oil industry in Alberta and Saskatchewan, taken from the West by the federal government and then handed over to Quebec for free, just for being awesome. Actually, it's because they're so economically sluggish. It's like internal welfare for the least productive provinces. That's more accurate. Now, at his press conference, Coderre actually had the temerity to call the pipeline company arrogant for daring to proceed in his, Coderre's, medieval fiefdom. How dare they?
But they were a bit arrogant, frankly.
A Quebec Liberal calling someone else arrogant, that's sort of like Kim Kardashian saying someone else is a media hound. Arrogant, eh? That's classic. So Coderre and the rest of Quebec's Liberals already get all the benefits from Canada's oil industry they want, and the West does the work. So they'll keep taking transfer payments paid for by Canada's oil and gas industry, but they'll block the pipeline that both the West and New Brunswick want, and they'll keep buying oil from OPEC instead. Well, who's going to stop Coderre? His fellow Montreal Liberal, Justin Trudeau? Coderre had his press conference yesterday, but still not a criticism of him from Trudeau or the federal Liberal Energy Minister, Jim Carr. Neither one of them dares to take on Coderre directly, because he's the senior fixer and fundraiser in the Liberal Party in Quebec. I bet you Justin Trudeau actually calls him Mr. Coderre or Mr. Mayor. And I bet you Coderre calls Trudeau Justin. That's how that relationship works. So not one single federal Liberal has dared to challenge Coderre or rein him in. None of the Liberal MPs from Alberta, certainly. They'd be fired. Of course, Alberta's NDP government provincially doesn't care either. They're against pipelines too, but that's another story. The story I'm talking about today is Quebec's Liberal greed for Western equalization payments matched with their hatred for the West. Alberta's opposition leader, Brian Jean, went on television yesterday to point out the hypocrisy of Coderre blocking a state-of-the-art pipeline for oil when Montreal literally dumps billions of liters of untreated, raw, human sewage directly into the St. Lawrence River. And by the way, 100 other Quebec cities and towns do it too. Yeah, sure wouldn't want a little drop of oil leak. Imagine how bad that would smell, eh? You got to be pretty shameless to wear a hazmat suit as mayor because you're dumping billions of liters of sewage into your own water and then say you're an eco-hero against the oil pipeline. But really, how's that any more shameless than attacking oil and gas production while living off the avails of oil and gas production? I mean, he's a Montreal Liberal. What do you expect? Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall joined the debate too, tweeting, "I trust Montreal area mayors will politely return their share of $10 billion in equalization supported by the West." Good point. And that's when Coderre just blew his stack. He lost his cool. His inner bigot came out. He started tweeting insults at Saskatchewan, not even at the premier, but at the entire province. There was no secretary there to stop Coderre, no editor to edit his tweets. He just showed his hatred. He tweeted, and I quote, I'm just translating into English, population of Metro Montreal, 4 million. Population of Saskatchewan, 1.13 million. Yeah, that's not an argument. That's not even really an insult. That's the old line, shut up, he explained. It's a way of saying, know your place, Saskatchewan, you're little. Take your abuse because you're small and we're big and you're right-wing, but we're liberals and we're the natural governing elites and we'll take your transfer payments and block your oil because shut up. Coderre was so pleased with himself that he kept tweeting and no one stopped him. He wrote, again I'm translating, federal grants to build Saskatchewan projects also come from Quebec, half of whom live in the Metro Montreal. Say thanks. Do you see that there at the end? Dites merci. That means say thank you. He's demanding that the West say thank you to Quebec. Say what? Is Denis Coderre seriously claiming that Quebec subsidizes the West? I mean, I've heard of 9/11 truthers before, people who think 9/11 was an inside job. They're kooks. They're like people who believe in UFOs or something. Denis Coderre is an equalization truther. He thinks Quebec subsidizes Saskatchewan. Kook. One more from the Sage of Montreal, showing he's the bigger man here, open-minded. He tweeted, we all contribute to the collective effort. One can take a position on issues that affect the citizens whom we represent. Oh, really? Does Quebec contribute to the collective effort? Financially, I mean. Well, let's go to the numbers. Here's the collective effort. The collective effort taken by Coderre and the other liberal piggies at the trough is pretty stunning. It's a heck of an effort. Look at this. This is from the Federal Finance Department's own website about equalization payments. In this fiscal year, do you see it there in the bottom right-hand corner? In this year, 2016-2017, Quebec will receive a record haul from Canada. Look at that. It's right there. A new record, $21.4 billion. That works out to a record $2,571 per person. So a family of 4 in Quebec gets more than $10,000 for free. Where do you think that comes from? Well, proportionately, the largest amounts are contributed from Alberta and Saskatchewan. According to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Albertans lose $2.1 billion a year in this scheme, and Saskatchewan loses $565 million. So $2,000 per family in Alberta and Saskatchewan, or family of 4, just goes out the door to Quebec. But Denis Coderre is telling the West to dire merci, to say thank you to him in French. And Saskatchewan could just shut up because it only has 1.1 million people. And do you hear that? That's the sound of silence. That's crickets from Trudeau's Liberals. They don't dare contradict him. Look, Coderre is not actually against oil. Montreal has millions of cars that need gas every day. Coderre just prefers conflict oil, brought in from OPEC via tanker ship. Those tanker ships either come right up the narrow St. Lawrence Seaway, or they drop the oil off in Portland, Maine, that is then pumped up to Montreal via, you guessed it, a pipeline. So he's not anti-oil, and he's not anti-pipeline. He's not even anti-tanker ship. As long as it has Sharia oil in it from Saudi Arabia, he's cool with that. He just doesn't want any of that Alberta oil, you see, because, I don't know, it's got Alberta cooties in it or something. I don't know. I guess it's extra oily or something. I don't know. I mean, Coderre's never been that bright about book learning. I love this old video. Take a look at this. Coderre has always been just a little bit off. He actually made TV news when he was a boy for going to a school science fair, to talk about UFOs. He was so stupid, he made the news for being stupid. That's quite something. Plus ça change, as they say in Quebec. Hey, if Montrealers want this clown, this low information kook as their mayor, that's their right. I mean, if the federal Liberals think it's fine for their most senior political operative in Quebec to attack the West, I guess that's fine. But as Brad Wall says, if you don't like oil, just say so, because we'd like our oil equalization payments back. I've never in my life seen a Western premier write a public letter to Quebecers saying, dites merci, say thank you. Those are ungrateful moochers out there, but that's fine. Or maybe that's part of the problem, because maybe Denis Coderre really doesn't know that the West bails out Quebec with billions of dollars every year. Maybe, just like he believes in UFOs, maybe he also believes that he actually subsidizes the West. Maybe he's just that stupid. Imagine he and Justin Trudeau having a policy meeting to talk about oil. I think those two Einsteins would sound a little bit like this.
Got room for one more if you still want to go to Aspen.
Where did you find that?
Some kid back in town traded the van for it, straight up. I can get 70 miles to the gallon on this hog.
You know, Lloyd, just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!
I love that clip from Dumb and Dumber. Yeah, Coderre and Trudeau. Look, they're Montreal's business. I think the rest of Canada has to look after its own business. And I say, cut them off. Cut off equalization payments to these ungrateful bigots. It's not even their ingratitude. I mean, I don't know a single Westerner who's waiting by the phone or the mailbox for a thank you note from Dumb and Dumber. We know that Quebec Liberals have an unparalleled sense of entitlement. We're not looking for a thank you from them. We're just looking for the abuse to end. Denis Coderre and all Quebec Liberals, including that prince of entitlement, that spoiled brat, that never worked a day in his life trust fund playboy, Justin Trudeau, they want it both ways. They want to be able to throw a temper tantrum and demonize oil and gas. Oh, but then they want the money from it. It's like a petulant teenager fighting with his mom and dad, saying how much he hates them. I hate you. How much he wants to be independent and free from them. And then right afterwards he says, oh, do you mind if I can borrow the car keys, take the car out tonight? Oh, and Mom, can you do my laundry? No, you spoiled brat. Just no. When oil prices are $28 a barrel and Alberta now has higher unemployment than the national average and taxes in Alberta are skyrocketing and Alberta's going to have a $10 billion deficit this year, sorry, no, not this time, you teenage brat. Time to rejig equalization. Time to cut off these spoiled brats. Or as Brad Wall joked, to tell Quebec that we'll send them their equalization payments by pipeline. You know, maybe stuff a bunch of $100 bills in a plastic bag and just pump it to Quebec. Oh, you want a little bit faster, eh? You wastrel Quebec Liberals spending money like Quebec Liberals. You can't wait so long? Well, you better get building that pipeline. Don't want you to be separated from your oil money, you greedy little Liberals. Brad Wall was joking about shipping equalization money by pipeline to clear Coderre's mind, but I'm not joking. I say cut him off. Like parents cutting off a petulant teenager's access to the family car until he behaves himself. I say cut off greedy Quebec Liberals, those hypocrites. If Denis Coderre doesn't want anything to do with oil, then let him have nothing to do with oil. Grant him his wish. Cut them off. Hey, do it in the name of climate change. Yeah, that's the ticket. Climate change. Those greedy Quebec Liberals should kick their carbon habit. You know, I'm starting to like this. I'm dead serious, actually. Any Montreal Liberal who demands Saskatchewan's oil money, but then mocks how small Saskatchewan is, and then demands to be thanked, dites merci, well, it's long past time to cut them off, don't you think? Hey, will you sign my petition? www.CutThemOff.ca. CutThemOff.ca. It's simple. We demand that any government that opposes oil and gas pipelines be cut off from oil and gas equalization payments. Pretty simple, pretty fair. That's CutThemOff.ca. This isn't just about economics and national unity. It's about self-respect. Visit CutThemOff.ca. Welcome back to the program. A very exciting day for freedom of speech. I don't get to say that a lot these days. Here in Toronto, the criminal prosecution of a man for engaging in debates on Twitter against feminists. A 3-year prosecution came to a close with the verdict of an acquittal. Joining me now to talk about the case of Gregory Allen Elliott is our friend Lauren Southern. Welcome, and thanks for coming in for Vancouver today.
Hi, Ezra. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you here. You're a great warrior for free speech and against vicious, authoritarian social justice warriors. Tell me a little bit about this case today.
Well, essentially, it started 3 years ago when Gregory Allen Elliott was doing actually free design work for these Women in Toronto Poly feminists, and they got into a bit of a scuff, and these feminists got mad at a guy on Twitter who created a game where you could punch a feminist in the face. So they decided they wanted to sick the internet on this gentleman, and Greg was like, maybe, sure, the game he made was bad, but sicking the internet on someone is just as bad. And they got into a scuffle, started fighting on Twitter. Nothing worse than you see on Twitter every single day.
So this is one of the tweets by Gregory Allen Elliott 3 years ago saying losers who attack in a cowardly pack. So he had actually helped these girls, but he didn't like the fact that they were being vicious, and so he named them. So just to be clear, this Gregory Allen Elliott, he was not making this punch a feminist game. He was just saying stop this forming.
No, he was not. He was just, he said the kid who made it was a young kid. He may have made a malicious game, but what you ladies are planning to do to him is just as malicious.
So there were going to be mean girls and trying blemishes. I mean, the internet can be a pretty nasty place, but it takes two to tango. I mean, on the internet, if you don't want to be harassed, just flick it off or block people, right?
Basically, well, they were actually going out of their way to find this guy and go and sick the internet. So after that, these girls decided that him questioning them on Twitter and continually going back and forth, they were making accusations about him being a pedophile, being a harasser, just these terrible, terrible accusations about him. And he'd go and defend himself. He'd tweet into hashtags. He'd tweet using their names. And they said because he was tweeting most of the time defending himself, because he was using their names, that was harassment.
Not just harassment, but criminal harassment. So let me sum up here, because I want to make sure we're clear. You talked about the particular starting point. He was sort of their friend, but then he objected to them being mean to some other guy. That's all interesting background, but really the heart of this case was this one man, Gregory Allen Elliott, got into a war of words on Twitter against some ex-friends, let's say, and they were all given and taken good, but then the feminists called the cops. Have I summed things up correctly?
Yep, and he was actually arrested. He was arrested, and they brought either 7 or 9 tweets, and he was arrested because of those tweets. And even now, the judge has said none of these tweets were violent. None of them were even harassment.
Now, we showed a couple of them on there, but tell me, I mean, you paid very close attention to this trial. You interviewed the family. You were there today. Tell me the worst of it. What was the absolute worst thing that Greg Allen Elliott said, according to the judge? The worst.
There was just, it was so mild. I think the worst one was he said that one of the accusers or complainants, Heather Riley, said she had a fat ass.
Now, I get called that all the time, but that's just at home. I won't bring my family life into this. No, I'm kidding. If calling someone fat or a fat ass, I might call that rude. I might call that straight talk. But to call that a criminal act worthy of, how many police, was he handcuffed? I have no idea. But they prosecuted him for 3 in a criminal court. We got all the murders taken care of in Toronto. We got all the rapes taken care of in Toronto. So this is the most important crime to fight in Toronto.
Apparently.
But today, and you just brought this into me, an 85-page ruling. Let's get to the good news. After 3 years of hell that he and his family went through, Justice Brent Knazin, tell me, I mean, he read this out in court. What was it like listening to it?
It was surreal. He said innocent, and there was just a relief over the court because he was facing 6 months in prison or jail if he was convicted of this crime that isn't even a crime, just speaking. But listening to a judge actually it seemed ridiculous listening to him read out tweets, talking about hashtags. He was literally describing smiley faces at the end of messages in this court case.
You know the phrase, don't make a federal case out of it? It's a term, it's a phrase, it's an idiom. Oh, don't make a federal case. They really made a federal case.
Yes.
Out of some Twitter tweet. How did the judge have any, I haven't read this, so you just delivered to me, and I thank you for that. I will go through it in detail. Did the judge have any words of criticism for the prosecutor who decided to prosecute, or for the police who made the charges? Surely he cannot have been pleased to have spent 3 years and to see these resources of the state brought to bear against an innocent man in what looks to me like an abuse of process. It's one thing to say to the guy, your prosecution's over, you can go now. Oh, and you've got a huge legal fee. But what about the machinery of the state? This wasn't a civil suit. Yeah. This was a criminal prosecution, taxpayers, the Department of Justice. Did the judge have anything to say about that?
Well, he was very, very polite and politically correct about the way he presented it. He was very nice to these girls in the way he presented it, the girls that came forward against Greg. He was strong in his points, saying this is freedom of speech in Canada, but he would also say, maybe they did feel harassed, so that's fair, but we just don't have evidence for it. So he was kind of just polite in the way he presented it. Obviously, if it were either one of us, we would have been angry because that is a massive waste of time, massive waste of tax dollars.
But there's the stigma too. I mean, if some loser sues you in civil court, you sort of say, oh, that's a hassle. But when the Queen, the name of the case is the Queen versus Gregory Allen Elliott, in the name of the country, in the name of the Queen, with the resources of the state, and if it was a conviction, it would be a mark against him that he was deemed an unperson. That's far more serious than just a bunch of girls, complaining or kvetching. And I am deeply disturbed that this even got so far. I'm glad it stopped where it stopped. But I think that Marnie Goldenberg, the prosecutor, and I think the police involved, they have some answering to do. Did they seem contrite in any way?
The Crown didn't speak. It was only the judge speaking the whole day. And you know what? I think the police should absolutely have to answer it. I think the Crown should have to answer for it. But the judge, the judge was just very polite with the entire process. It was very, very strange.
Well, and the judge has to be careful, because if he shows some intemperate conduct himself, that would open this case up to an appeal even. Anyone can appeal this. The Crown can appeal this. But the judge and how he writes it, I think, has to take a moderate and thoughtful and balanced judge-like tone. Do you think that this will be appealed, or do you think the ridicule on this prosecutor and these police and these complainants is so much that they won't proceed?
I am hoping that Gregory Allen Elliott himself will go forward and, because these girls, quite frankly, you can't sue these girls for the money that he's lost, the time that he's lost. They don't have money.
Right.
They don't have money. However, the police and the Crown, they have an opportunity there.
There's a lot of limits and immunities for suing prosecutors and cops. But let me ask you my final question. You've been very generous with your time. You know what? I want to mention to our viewers that Lauren has done so much work on this, including today. You were down at the courthouse. So this is just a little recap, because you have interviews, you were at the courthouse. This is just a teaser, folks. Go elsewhere on our website to get the full Lauren Southern details. I'm just grabbing her before she flies home. Last question to you. You mentioned that we covered this story, obviously. Christy Blatchford covered it with an eye to political correctness and freedom of speech. How would you say the mainstream media in general treated this issue? Did journalists stand up for freedom of speech, or were they more standing up for feminist authoritarianism?
I'd have to say feminist authoritarianism. Quite frankly, Guthrie is friends with the CBC. She goes on their show. She's been on Q. Guthrie and all of these feminists, they're all connected with the Toronto government, with the media. They've been published in, Guthrie was published in the Toronto Sun, I believe, as one of the top tweeters of 2015.
My God.
Yes, and she's winning all of these awards. She's on CBCQ, and they are still, I saw people from BuzzFeed tweeting out today saying they don't care about the verdict. They're going to find harassment that Greg did to women, like searching to continue this case. And I'm like, this guy has been through enough.
You know, it's incredible to me. Obviously, Twitter wanted this acquittal because Twitter wants its forum to be free for users. But on the other hand, Twitter itself has been cracking down through their own internal social justice warriors against Milo Yiannopoulos and other people. So I have to say, censorship is on the march in the prosecution, in the police, in Twitter itself. We have one judge who stood against it today.
Well, even then, this isn't the end of this. One of the scariest things I heard today was when he said if there were one tweet in there that could have been deemed harassing, could have been deemed a little more violent, it would be a very different trial. Yeah. Very different.
We live in dangerous days if you care about freedom. I know you do, Lauren. You fight for it hard every day. We do too here in Toronto. The Rebel, you're our Western flank. Thank you for doing everything you do.
Absolutely.
And folks, Lauren Southern's outstanding in fighting against radical social justice warriors and feminism. You can see the rest of her coverage of this important matter elsewhere. In fact, we've set up a special website with all of Lauren's work called twitterfreedom.com. twitterfreedom.com. You can type that in and get all her stuff in one place. Stay with us after these words. More on the Rebel.media.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know the Rebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to therebel.media/store to find out more.
Welcome back. If there were any justice in this world, our next guest would be the most Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist in North America. Simply put, he has broken more scoops than any other journalist I can name, more even than Woodward and Bernstein. But because he comes at things from a contrarian, conservative point of view, not only is he not rewarded and awarded by the industry, but he is marginalized and demonized. That's why we call it the media party. And our next guest, James O'Keefe, is certainly the leader of the opposition, and he joins us now via Skype from New York. James, great to see you again. The idea of the Common Core school curriculum, I don't think it's that commonplace in Canada. I think that's what it's called in the United States. In Canada, we have different versions of it. It's sort of new age, liberal, unteaching, like it's bizarre approaches to math and language. How would you describe the Common Core curriculum that's so popular in the States?
So Common Core is not an actual organization. It's an implementation. It's an initiative by the United States federal government to require local states to adopt certain curriculum. And those curriculum change the way students think, change the way they teach disciplines like mathematics. For example, they change arithmetic. They change the way the approach to thinking by young people. They teach young people to be more abstract. They focus more on process than the result. They focus more on our American history is racist and filled with dead white guys. They don't want to talk about right and wrong, truth and fact. They don't want to talk about they change algebra, and it's prompted a complete revolt by families across our country. And they're big four publishers: Houghton, Mifflin, Pearson, McGraw-Hill, the same types of book publishers you have in Canada. These publishers are the ones who stand to profit off the implementation of Common Core. They use taxpayer dollars, and they spend millions of dollars lobbying the government to change the programs so they can make more money off this.
Yeah. Now those are people who have found a way to profit financially. I see this Common Core style junk math in my own kids' school, where they're asked to solve a math problem, and even if they get the right answer, then they're said, tell a little story about this. And if they don't have the right subjective explanation, they get marked down. That has creeped into Canada. So you've got the ideological and philosophical blurring of truth, replacing right and wrong, 2 + 2 is 4, with this blurry anything goes. But what you focused on in your videos today, and we're going to jump into them because we've been taking along getting to the good stuff here. You sent people undercover to talk to senior executives at these school book publishing companies to get them to speak candidly about what they think Common Core is about. We've got 3 videotapes, James, that you guys have. The first is Diane Barrow from Houghton Mifflin. Let's take a look at that clip, and then I'll ask you to explain what it means. So roll the first one, please.
You seem like you're in it for the kids, though. You seem like, you know, I mean, I don't
hate kids. I'm in it to sell books. Don't even kid yourself for a heartbeat.
Yeah. I mean, he couldn't be more blunt. She's in it to sell books. Don't even kid yourself.
Right.
What happened to Diane Barrow after you? Like, she wasn't just a low-level employee.
No.
She was a senior person in Houghton Mifflin. What happened after that video was released by you?
Well, they fired her. They fired her immediately. I mean, usually when we do these videos, they try to drag their heels. They try to say, well, this is an isolated incident, or worse, that it's doctored, that the person didn't say what they were caught saying. They fired her 5 minutes before the video came out. And Houghton Mifflin released a statement. Pearson Publishing released a statement because Diane Barrow used to work for Pearson. They said, well, this does not represent our company. It does not represent our 40,000 employees. You heard her there say, I hate kids. She goes on to say, quote, you don't think the educational publishing companies are in it for education, do you? No, they're in it for the money, unquote. That's what she says. So finally we have a face, a personification for what we all suspect to be true about Common Core.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go to show that it wasn't just one isolated executive. Everyone you spoke with that you've released the videos on, they're all singing from the same sheet that this is just, it's a bit of a sham. Here's a video. You interviewed Amelia Pettis from Houghton Mifflin, also the same company that pushes Common Core textbooks. Let's take a look at that video clip.
Common Core is not new. We're calling it Common Core. Woohoo, call it Common Core.
For our purposes, we have to look at it as a business. Is this thing going to sustain?
I think if anything would change, it would just be slapping, like you're repurposing the same thing.
Yeah.
And slapping a new name on it, which in my case, I hope they do.
Yeah.
Slap a new name on it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because
then I can sell a shit ton of training around whatever you're calling it.
And what you're saying, which, tell me if I understand you correctly, is that if it does change, so maybe this isn't something we should be worried about. If it does change, there's still money in it because it's the same stuff.
There's always money.
There's always money in it because kids are great, but it's not always about the kids.
It's never about the kids.
That laughter, I mean, when these folks, they didn't know they were being recorded. They thought they could speak candidly. It's so odd to me, and these are not low-level people. You're talking to executives of the company. The fact that they're laughing at the absurdity of it, but they're laughing really at all the suckers, the parents, the school boards, and even in a way, some teachers who don't like it, that they have to be suckered. They've got to train themselves on this BS curriculum that makes no sense because, as she said, it's not about the kids, it's about the dough. What happened to Amelia Pettis? Was she fired too?
Yes, she was. In fact, I think that what's fascinating about the series is that the companies, these companies, this is Houghton Mifflin as well, or Houghton Mifflin rather, is how you pronounce it, that these companies do not tolerate this. They fire them immediately. I think it hits so close to home. I actually believe that Amelia Pettis and Diane Barrow, these executives, they were definitely culprits in this whole racket. They're standing to personally profit off of it. But what's interesting about it is that they're telling the truth. They're telling the truth, not just about how they feel, but about the environment they operate in. I mean, this is nothing more than a thinly disguised scheme. It's a money-making racket. It's a crony racket. People say, oh, James, these are just capitalistic corporations trying to turn a profit. You don't have a problem with profit. I said, no, they're not capitalistic organizations because they would not exist but not for them working hand in hand with the government to boost just nothing. It's like the student loan industry. Yeah. So these guys, Amelia Pettis was fired immediately by Houghton Mifflin. Then they sent another statement and said this doesn't represent our industry. So now we released the third video. And then we're going to release another one too, by the way. We just released one yesterday.
Well, we got one more clip we can show today, and this is Kim Korber, former Pearson executive, Pearson, another publishing house. Let's take a look at this one.
They don't agree with Islam, so they want the kids to know about it. They don't agree with birth control, so they don't want the kids to talk about it. They don't agree with math because they don't understand it. It's not the same math that they did in high school, so they don't want the kids to know about it. People who say that they want to teach the Constitution, they want to teach the part of the Constitution that they like. Which
Second
they want to
Amendment.
teach all of it. The damn Second Amendment. I don't think personally I've done things anywhere except the government, police. I don't think. What is the purpose of having? Yeah.
A little bit hard to hear, but the text was on the screen. So I can imagine the series of undercover operations to build trust with these people, to get them to speak candidly, meet outside, meet in a restaurant. But we could make it out there. Here's another executive who shows clearly what I was getting at, that there's an ideology behind this. The first two executives we showed were out for the dough. They were laughing, oh, those suckers, they'll buy anything. But this woman seems motivated by a philosophy. She doesn't believe in what she calls old-fashioned math. She doesn't believe in old-fashioned ideas like the Constitution or firearms. That clip goes on when she denigrates Texans and Christians. That's actually what I'm more worried about, James. I've given up on the school system or education being fiscally responsible. That ship has sailed in my mind. What bothers me is the undermining ideology that they're trying to brainwash our kids. This woman couldn't have been any clearer. What do you say?
I mean, I think it's one of the best examples of visually what we've been talking about. I mean, this is exactly what the homeschool mothers have been talking about, the ideological commitment to changing the way we view our country. You know, she says the dead white guys. You know, Texas, which is one of the states which tried not to adopt Common Core, well, she says about Texas that Texas is all... it bothers me. Texas keeps screwing it up over and over. Texas got upset about it, and they wanted to have their founders. They wanted to pound the founders, is what she says. And she says the dead white guys not create this country. They want to talk about the dead white guys. And it really gets into how these people view, I think, the curriculum. They believe that parents should not have power in working with their children. That's why they want to change the math standards, because if they change the way math is taught, the mother and father in a family are not going to have any say about it. They're going to say, well, it's up to the school. And the parents don't want to opt out of Common Core because they don't want their kids not to be able to get into college. And the college entrance examinations are written by these companies.
Incredible.
So it's all a scheme. It's a big money-making power scheme. Ideology and the money go hand in hand.
Wow, James O'Keefe, you've done it again. The website is called projectveritas.com. I can hardly wait till your next expose. Thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thank you.
Stay with us. More after these words.
I love Alberta. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our free market, pro-business, low-tax, do-it-yourself attitude. And now, I'm watching my province get destroyed. We've all had hints of the NDP's radical views in the past, but no one actually thought they'd ever run this province. Not even them. And now they are. And the worst is yet to come. I give my sad forecast for Alberta in my new ebook, The Destroyers, Rachel Notley and the NDP's War on Alberta. Go to thedestroyers.ca to sign up for your free copy today.
Hey, welcome back. This is my favorite part of the show, your viewer feedback. Elizabeth writes, Ezra, please remove the offensive photo of Justin Trudeau at the beginning of the latest. There are too many photos of him on the videos. Many thanks, Elizabeth. Trying to remove photos of Justin Trudeau from the world is like trying to remove snowflakes from a blizzard or grains of sand from the seashore. It's pretty much his one move. Campaign stop, selfie. International conference, selfie. Muslim terrorist attack murders 6 Canadian Christians in Africa, selfie at a mosque. Sorry, Elizabeth. Only legally blind people can avoid Justin Trudeau photos. John writes, the Rebel Media website sucks. The duplication, triplication, and more so of the issues and topics are very annoying to navigate through. Why do you need all the separate headings? Video, megaphone, the latest, etc., when all the postings on this site are video-based? And why are some posts up for weeks while others are gone in a matter of days? Hi, John. I appreciate your passion because you obviously want to make our website better. I want to make it better too, though I disagree with you that it sucks. The good news is that next month we expect to unveil our website version 3.0. just in time for our 1-year anniversary. Hopefully you'll be a little less cranky then, but I appreciate the constructive feedback. Thank you. V writes, there is no room for discussion here. This is about the RCMP hijab. If a Muslim RCMP constable is observant enough to go to all the trouble of insisting upon and then wearing a hijab, they're definitely going to be observant enough to know that it is strictly forbidden by Allah himself for a Muslim to take the side of an infidel against a fellow Muslim. According to their religion, it is a certainty that they would be burned for eternity in the fires of hell if they were ever to side with an infidel against a believer. Logically, there is just no way a true Muslim could ever be a cop or a soldier or a judge or a prosecutor or even serve on a jury without coming into terrible conflict with their religion. That's a very interesting comment. See, that's what makes most radical Islam different from other religions, even fundamentalist views of them, or at least the form of Islam represented by the hijab. Look, it is by nature political. It is by nature imposing itself above and upon the secular world, especially the secular world of laws. That's what Islam means, submission. Submission to Islam. The hijab is a symbol of Muslim supremacism. So if a Muslim police officer is so devout that she wears the hijab, if she knows its religious significance, she surely is fundamentalist enough to believe the concept of Sharia law. And that is superior to secular laws. It's not like the Christian belief of render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Islam doesn't do that. Islam is a belief that is contrary to the belief in the equality of all people before the law. Could you really expect someone flying the flag of the hijab to implement the RCMP's laws? That's a great question, and I don't think we've plumbed it to its full depths. Folks, what do you think of the week at TV? What do you think of Lauren Southern and her coverage of this Twitter prosecution? It's one thing to be tied up in human rights commissions or defamation in civil court, but a criminal prosecution of a guy because he said someone on Twitter had a fat ass? I hear that 10, 20 times a day, and I'm just talking about from my friends. Now, if you want to see the rest of Lauren Southern's coverage of that, click elsewhere on this website. A big week. I know next week's going to be even bigger. Send me your thoughts, Ezra, therebel.media, Facebook us, tweet to us. Folks, that's it for this week. Hey, you, over the weekend, keep fighting for freedom. Bye-bye.